I used to think my wife, Rachel, was the most loyal woman alive. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 5, and through every storm and season, I believed she was my anchor. She was driven, intelligent, and warm. The kind of person who remembered your favorite coffee order and left sticky notes with small hearts on your laptop before work. We weren't perfect, no couple is, but I truly thought we were solid. That's what made the betrayal so devastating. It started small, as it always does. Rachel had been working at a major marketing firm for the last 3 years. Her position required travel from time to time, client meetings, seminars, training sessions. I never questioned it. I trusted her. But then, things changed. The first time she mentioned a new client out of town, she seemed excited, almost too excited. "It's a huge opportunity," she told me, her eyes bright. "They're sending me to Dallas for 4 days. It could lead to a promotion." "Dallas, huh?" I smiled. "Sounds great. You deserve it." She hugged me tight, her scent lingering even after she walked away. That night she spent hours packing, obsessing over outfits, lingerie, shoes. I remember teasing her. "You're going on a business trip, not a runway show." She laughed, brushing it off. "A girl has to look professional." I didn't think much of it then, but when she came back, something felt different. She was distant. Her eyes darted away when I asked simple questions, and she started keeping her phone face down. A week later, she was on another trip, this time to Chicago, then Phoenix, then Denver. At first, I was proud. "She's really moving up," I told my friend Jacob one evening over beers. He nodded slowly. "That's great, man. Just make sure she's not working too hard." I laughed. "Rachel? She lives for that stuff." But something inside me felt off. The first red flag came 2 months later. She was away on business, supposedly at a client conference in Phoenix. I was folding laundry when her iPad lit up on the counter. We shared the same Apple account. A message appeared. "Can't wait for tomorrow night." Same room? The name was saved as Megan Work. I frowned. I didn't think she had a colleague named Megan. Curiosity turned to dread when I opened the thread. Dozens of deleted messages. Only fragments remained, but enough to tell me something was wrong. "Last time was amazing. Wish you didn't have to go home. You smell like trouble." My hands started to shake. I scrolled further until I found a photo. Her, wearing a silk robe, clearly taken in a hotel room. It wasn't overly explicit, but it was intimate enough. My heart dropped. For a moment I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Megan was some kind of inside joke. But deep down I knew. When she returned, I didn't confront her immediately. I wanted proof, undeniable proof. So I acted normal. Asked about her trip, listened to her rehearsed answers. She told me about the long meetings, the networking dinners, the presentation stress. I smiled and nodded, all while feeling something inside me crumble. That night, when she went to shower, I checked her suitcase. Everything looked ordinary, except for a small box tucked beneath her clothes. Inside was a perfume I'd never seen before, expensive, seductive, and a new black lace set. Not gifts from me. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own home. She changed her passcode so I couldn't access her phone. She stopped leaving her iPad unlocked. She even started showering at odd hours. One night she fell asleep on the couch, exhausted. I carefully took her phone and connected it to my laptop. Through the synced data, I discovered emails, hotel bookings, dinner reservations, flights, all to the same city. All with overlapping dates with someone named Eric S. My stomach tightened. I looked him up. Eric Saunders, regional director at her company. Married, 2 kids. Of course. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the dark screen of my phone, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, to smash something, but instead I opened my journal, something I hadn't touched in years, and started writing everything down. The dates, the evidence, the lies. It was strange. Writing it made it real. The next morning, Rachel acted as if everything was normal. She made breakfast, kissed my cheek, and told me she'd be in meetings all afternoon. When she left, I sat there for nearly 10 minutes, just staring at the door she'd closed behind her.
Then I made a decision. If she was lying about her next trip, I was going to find out. Her next business trip was to Seattle, supposedly a 3-day strategy retreat. I checked her emails again. The hotel reservation matched one she'd used before, same place as Eric S. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I booked a ticket to Seattle. She had no idea. I arrived a day after she did. I didn't tell her I was coming. I checked into a small hotel across the street from hers and waited. That evening, I walked into the hotel lobby where she was staying. It was strange, surreal almost. Watching her from a distance, laughing with her coworkers, she looked radiant, carefree, like a version of herself I hadn't seen in months. And then I saw him. Tall, well-dressed, confident. Eric. He placed a hand on her back as they walked toward the elevator, whispering something that made her smile. She didn't pull away. They disappeared upstairs together. My heart shattered right there in that lobby. For nearly an hour, I sat in the car outside, gripping the steering wheel, breathing hard, trying to keep from breaking down completely. Every image of her, every memory, every kiss, every moment flashed through my mind like a cruel montage. All those late nights she said she was working late, all those business calls she took behind closed doors, all the times she said, "You're overthinking things, Michael." I felt like the biggest fool alive. I didn't go up that night. I couldn't. Instead, I checked into my room and waited. The next morning, I went back to the lobby at sunrise. Sure enough, an hour later, they came down together, laughing, talking. His hand brushed hers. She leaned into him. They weren't even trying to hide it. Something in me died at that moment. When she finally returned home 2 days later, I was waiting in the kitchen. She walked in, surprised. "Michael, you're home early." "Yeah, just wanted to see you." She smiled faintly. "That's sweet." I studied her carefully. She looked different, softer somehow. Guilt flickered across her eyes when I held her gaze too long. "How was Seattle?" She sighed. "Exhausting. Back-to-back readings. I barely slept." I nodded slowly. "I bet." I wanted to confront her right then, to throw the photos, the messages, the hotel invoices, even a screenshot of her flight confirmation with Eric's name listed under companion. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew it wasn't over. I couldn't let her lie to my face one more time. The confrontation came a week later when she announced another trip, this one to San Francisco. But this time, I wasn't going to follow her. I was going to stop her before she left. That morning, as she packed her suitcase, I watched her carefully. "Big meeting again?" She hesitated. "Yeah, the company's expanding. Lots of planning." I smiled faintly. "Right." She zipped her suitcase and turned toward me. "I'll call you when I land, okay?" "Sure. Just one question before you go." She paused, her eyes wary. "What's that?" I held up the printed photo, the one of her and Eric in the hotel lobby, laughing, his arm around her waist. Her face drained of color. She didn't speak for several seconds. Her lips trembled. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "I was there. Seattle. The hotel. The man. I saw everything." Her mouth opened, then closed. Tears welled in her eyes. "Michael, it's not what it looks like." I laughed, a cold, bitter sound that didn't feel like mine. Don't insult me anymore." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "How long?" I asked. "How long have you been lying to me?" She broke down. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of betrayal. My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed calm. "You should go," I said. "Take your trip, but this time, don't come back." She sobbed, pleading, trying to explain, but I couldn't hear her anymore. Her words were just noise fading behind the pounding in my head. When she finally walked out the door, I stood there for a long time, listening to the echo of it closing. That was the sound of my marriage ending.
The house was silent after Rachel left. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at her half-packed suitcase by the door. She'd taken what she could grab in panic: clothes, makeup, her work laptop, but left behind everything that mattered. The framed photo from our honeymoon in Santorini, the birthday card I'd written her last year, the mug that said "Best Wife Ever." I didn't move for hours, just stood there, staring, trying to process the emptiness. It wasn't the kind of silence you could escape from. It was the kind that sat in your chest, heavy and hollow. I didn't cry, not at first. Instead, I went through the motions, locking the door, turning off the lights, sitting at the kitchen table. I stared at the pile of printed evidence, photos, messages, receipts, proof of everything she'd destroyed. It felt unreal. I kept expecting her to walk back in and tell me it was all a terrible misunderstanding, that it was just work, that she loved me, that I was being paranoid. But I'd seen the truth. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. That night, I drank until the room blurred, not out of rage, but out of loss. I wasn't angry at her anymore. I was angry at myself for trusting so blindly, for defending her when the signs were there all along. When the bottle was empty, I picked up the photo of us on our wedding day. She was smiling, eyes bright with tears. I remembered the way she'd whispered, "You're my forever." Maybe she'd believed it then, but forever turned out to have an expiration date. The next morning, my best friend Jacob showed up unannounced. He must have seen my message from the night before, the short one I'd sent at 2 a.m. "She's gone." He took one look at me and said, "Jesus, Mike, you look like hell." "Thanks," I muttered. "You bring coffee?" He did. We sat in silence for a while, the air thick with everything unspoken. Then he asked the question I'd been avoiding. "You're sure you're done?" I nodded. She admitted it. 6 months. He whistled softly. "Damn. What are you going to do now?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Start over, I guess?" He leaned forward. "Don't let this turn you bitter, man. She's the one who failed, not you." I wanted to believe that, but at that moment, all I felt was failure. A week passed before Rachel called. I ignored the first few times. Then she started showing up at the house, knocking for nearly a half an hour until I finally opened the door. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She said, "Please, Michael, can we talk?" I didn't want to, but part of me needed closure. I let her in. She looked around the house like it was unfamiliar territory, like she was visiting a memory instead of a home. "I made a mistake," she said finally, her voice cracking. "The biggest mistake of my life." I folded my arms. You made 6 months' worth of mistakes." She flinched. "I know. I was stupid. I got caught up in something I didn't even understand. He made me feel alive again, like I mattered. But it wasn't real. None of it." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. "Then why didn't you stop?" She broke down. "Because I was too far gone. Because I didn't think you'd still care." That hit harder than I expected. "Didn't think I'd care?" I repeated. "Rachel, I built my whole life around you. I worked extra hours so you wouldn't have to stress about bills. I planned our future. You were my home." Tears rolled down her face. "I know, and I destroyed it." There was nothing left to say. When she reached out to touch my hand, I pulled away. "You need to leave," I said quietly. "We're done." She hesitated at the door, whispering, "I'll always love you." I didn't respond. After she left, I sat there for a long time, letting the quiet swallow everything. The following months were a blur. Divorce lawyers, paperwork, empty nights. Every room in the house felt haunted, not by her presence, but by her absence. The smell of her perfume faded slowly, but not fast enough. Friends told me to move on, to date again, to distract myself. But how do you move on when your entire sense of trust has been burned to ash? I started going to therapy. At first, it felt pointless, sitting there recounting every detail like a broken record. But little by little, it helped. The therapist told me something that stuck with me. You can't rebuild what she destroyed, but you can rebuild yourself. That line became my mantra. So I started running in the mornings, cooking again, calling my parents more. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was movement. About 6 months later, I bumped into someone I hadn't seen in years. Lily, an old college friend. We'd lost touch after graduation, but seeing her again felt easy, natural. We talked over coffee, then dinner, then another dinner. She never asked too much about Rachel, and I was grateful for that.
One night, as we walked along the pier, she said, "You still look for her, don't you?" I hesitated. "Sometimes. Not because I miss her, but because I miss who I thought she was." Lily nodded. "That's the hardest part, letting go of the version of someone that only existed in your heart." She was right. From that night on, something in me shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was just free. A year after the divorce was finalized, Rachel called again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was quiet. "I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For not hating me publicly. For not destroying my life like I did yours." I didn't know what to say. "I'm not interested in revenge, Rachel. I just wanted peace." She sniffled. "You deserve that." "I hope you find it." I hung up feeling strangely calm. That call wasn't closure. I'd already found that. But it was confirmation. I wasn't broken anymore. 2 years later, I married Lily. It wasn't a fairy tale. We both had scars, both carried the weight of old wounds. But that's what made it real. There was no pretending, no secrets, just honesty and quiet love. On our wedding night, as we sat watching the sunset from the balcony, Lily turned to me and said, "You know, you're the most patient man I've ever met." I smiled. "No, I just learned the hard way that love without trust isn't love at all." She rested her head on my shoulder. "Then let's make this one honest." And we did. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about Rachel. Not with anger, more like remembering a storm that once tore through your home. You don't hate the rain, you just remember how hard it fell. If I ever saw her again, I'd probably thank her. Not for what she did, but for what it taught me. Because the truth is, her betrayal didn't destroy me. It rebuilt me. It forced me to see my worth, to stop pouring love into someone who couldn't hold it. Cheating doesn't just break marriages. It breaks illusions. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need to finally see clearly.